Welcome in, everyone. You're listening to Echoes from the Dome, your podcast for everything Syracuse basketball. I'm your host, Eli, and let's go ahead and get started right into the day's main topics. Today, we will be covering Syracuse's 81-73 overtime loss at Boston College. Is the Red Autry era coming to an end? And we will preview Virginia Tech for Syracuse's next opponent. Thank you guys for tuning in. This is the first ever show here on Echoes from the Dome. So with that, I want to introduce myself and tell you about who I am and why I'm a Syracuse fan. So immediately, the accent probably throws you off. This is definitely not an upstate New York accent. I am from the South, so that immediately raises the question how I became a Syracuse fan. So I've been a Syracuse fan most of my life. My papaw is where I get my Syracuse fandom from. He was a high school basketball coach and was a radio broadcaster for high school basketball for many years, so he loved the game of basketball. And his favorite coach was naturally Jim Boeheim. So when I was a young kid, I grew up watching a lot of Big East basketball, and primarily Syracuse because his favorite coach was Jim Boeheim. So immediately I kind of gravitated towards Syracuse and picked them as my favorite team. So that's where Syracuse comes from, even though I am from the South. I love the orange dearly. I've been a Syracuse fan for most of my life, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. So enough about me. Let's go ahead and get to the podcast. Syracuse falls at Boston College 81-73 over the weekend. This game happened on Saturday. This is being recorded on a Monday. So a couple days to digest what was really a brutal loss for the Syracuse Orange. And to me, seems like no way back to the bubble now for Syracuse after what was a quad 3 loss at Boston College. So let's just go ahead and recap this game. I really would like to just throw this out of my memory, but I can't. So let's go ahead and just break down what happened in this game. So let's start with the positives first, because there's obviously a lot of negatives that come from a loss, and especially a loss that's not a good one. So I do want to start with the positive. This was obviously Nate King's best game of the season. 27 points, 8 for 12 from the field, 5 of 6 from 3. That's huge right there, 5 of 6 from 3, as we know that Nate Kings can shoot the ball. He is a very capable shooter and shot very well at Oregon State last year, but has struggled to find his shot from the outside this season. So that is a very encouraging sign. Also, 6 for 6 from the free throw line. This was someone that obviously Syracuse as a team has struggled with free throws, but Nate Kings in particular has struggled with free throws, which is very surprising for a guy that we know shoots the ball very well. So that's my very first positive sign, is Nate King shot the ball well, had 27 points, shot well from the field, the three-point line, and the free throw line. So good job for Nate King, because he desperately needed a game like that. Unfortunately, I think that's my only positive from this game. The unfortunate part of this is a very bad loss for Syracuse. And due to this being a very bad loss for Syracuse, we have to look at the negatives. The negatives that pop out right at me is 18 turnovers. This has been something that Syracuse has had trouble with in the offense all season long. And I kept telling myself, I don't know why I did, I kept telling myself that Syracuse was eventually going to fix these turnovers and they were going to be fine on offense. Well, I was desperately wrong, because we're 18 games into the season, 5 games into conference play, and Syracuse has a whopping 18 turnovers in a game that is seemingly must win. You can't lose at Boston College. It's a game that really doesn't do much for your resume, but if you lose it, it absolutely kills your resume. And what disappoints me the most is I look at this stat line and I see point guard Nathan George, 6 points, 2 for 8 from the field, only 2 assists, but 7 turnovers. Now, I was really starting to believe in Nathan George, especially over the last few games. He had 2 double-digit assist games against Pittsburgh and Florida State, obviously inferior opponents, as was Boston College. But Pittsburgh and Florida State, he played very well against those two teams. Had a lot of assists, minimized his turnovers, and I thought that Nate George was potentially turning a corner for this team. But he had a major step back on Saturday against Boston College. 7 turnovers. And also I look at this as well, and I have to look at this because I don't want to single out Nathan George. But Donnie Freeman, 7 turnovers as well. And if you know me personally, I love Donnie Freeman. I believe in Donnie Freeman. I think this guy is a first-round pick. I think a lot of NBA teams would be crazy to pass on him as a first-round pick. But we have to say the obvious. He didn't play great either. He came back from injury, was looking good, had a very solid second half against Clemson, looked awesome against Georgia Tech, Pitt, and Florida State, looked okay against Boston College, but that 7 turnovers really mask the performance that Donnie had, as he did have a double-double with 19 points and 14 rebounds, but the 7 turnovers really hurt Donnie Freeman. And Syracuse, it felt like Syracuse just could never really break away in this basketball game. I mean, that's really how I felt about it the entire way. I had a gut feeling that Syracuse was going to be, before this game, I had a feeling that Syracuse was going to be in a dogfight today. And it's not because Boston College is any great team or anything. Props to Boston College. They outworked and outcoached this Syracuse team. That's the bottom line. But Boston College does not score a lot, but they do get down and they will defend. They have a lot of games where they play in the 50s, 60s. If you kept up with them in the non-conference, they had some really bad losses. But it was really not because they couldn't defend. It was more so because they couldn't score. So I thought that Syracuse would ultimately be in a dogfight because we know that Syracuse offensively has not been good against decent defenses this year. Decent and up defenses. Syracuse has not been good offensively against them. And again, they weren't today. Now, I thought on Saturday, I thought a lot of the issues with Syracuse was just self-inflicted mistakes. I thought that Syracuse made some very poor decisions with the ball. Really some like elementary, middle school turnovers Saturday. And ultimately, those turnovers were what won Boston College the game. There's no doubt about it. And Syracuse was not able to break away from Boston College. There was many times in the game that Syracuse would build a 5-point lead, then they'd build a 7-point lead, but they were never able to break away from Boston College just because they were not good with the basketball. They were careless with the ball, and that's the bottom line to it. It was 62-55. I thought maybe that Syracuse would have enough to get it over the line, get a couple stops, but again, Syracuse went back to turning the ball over, not getting good possessions, and allowing Boston College to seemingly get back into the game and force overtime. Now, the biggest part of the game, to me, 64-61, 19 seconds left in the game, 8 or 9 seconds left on the shot clock. Syracuse gets the timeout, and a bucket seemingly ices the game. Syracuse gets the ball in, and Boston College fouls. Now, when this happened in real time, I thought that Boston College had just given us the game because I thought that they had made a poor decision. They had played it out on defense for about 20 seconds, and I thought fouling with 8 to 9 seconds on the shot clock, you're seemingly just giving Syracuse the game. I thought it was a poor decision on their part. And what made it even worse is it was Donnie Freeman that they fouled. Donnie Freeman, if you don't know, is by far Syracuse's best and most consistent free throw shooter. Donnie Freeman, who is 5 for 5 from the line, steps up, 1-and-1, misses the free throw, ball gets deflected out of bounds, Boston College ball. So, in hindsight, it looks like a great decision by Boston College, but in real time, it felt like Boston College had kind of given Syracuse the game with that foul. But obviously it works out. Donnie Freeman misses his one and only free throw of the game. Boston College gets the ball. Timeout. They draw up a play. Knock down a three. Force overtime. And then overtime, I'll be honest with you, I turned the game off after Boston College went out to, I believe it was a 70-64, maybe 72-66 lead, because it was brutal to watch. Plain and simple, it was brutal to watch this team absolutely just collapse in overtime to a Boston College team that, no offense, is just not that good. They're just not that good. And it hurt to see that from a Syracuse team who I thought was building a little momentum. So it hurt. It hurt to watch that against a Boston College team that just has not had a very good year. At 7-10, now 8-10, you give them their first ACC victory. And that was just, it was heartbreaking to watch as a Syracuse fan. So, enough with the game recap, because I think that we can come to the conclusion that Donnie Freeman, Nathan George, be better with the basketball. You can bond for 14 of the 18 turnovers for the team. Donnie Freeman, who is only a sophomore, really kind of only a freshman still because of how much time he missed last season, how much time he's missed this season. But Donnie Freeman is by far the most talented player on the roster. 7 turnovers is not good enough. Nathan George, a junior, has experience, led the ACC in assists per game last season at Georgia Tech. This guy's a junior. He should not be having 7 turnovers against Boston College. Now, maybe you cut him a little bit of slack if he does this against Houston earlier in the year. Maybe Duke later on, a really good defensive team in Duke. Maybe Louisville, UNC. But Boston College, is the bottom line, is unacceptable. And those turnovers is ultimately what lost Syracuse's basketball game. Plain and simple. Now, we move on from the first main topic. Kind of still in the first main topic, but kind of drifting away from the recap part of it. And we turn the attention back to head coach Adrian "Red" Autry. Man, Adrian "Red" Autry. Is the Adrian "Red" Autry era coming to an end? I hate to say it, but it sure does feel like it. And I hate to say it because I think Adrian Autry is a great dude. He's a great guy. He loves it. He loves Syracuse University. Loves it to death. Was a legendary player for the school. Has been a coach and around the program for many, many years. But as much as I hate to say it, I don't think that Adrian Autry is fit to be the head coach at Syracuse University. And I don't like to say it because I do genuinely like Adrian Autry as a person. But the more and more that this tenure goes on, that this head coaching stint goes on, the more that I believe that Adrian Autry is just out of his depth as a head coach here at Syracuse. And I love Adrian Autry. When he got the job, I was super pumped for the guy. I knew how long he had been on staff. I knew how much he had learned from legendary head coach Jim Boeheim. I wanted Adrian Autry to work out as much as anyone else. And I thought he had a very promising first season. I know we weren't a tournament team, but 20 wins. I thought with maybe some roster movement, some adjustments, that Syracuse could surely be a bubble team, just a bubble team under Adrian Autry. Then we know how year 2 goes. Obviously, I'm not going to get into year 2. We know how disastrous that season was for the Orange. But this year, there's no excuses. No excuses for Adrian Autry in year 3. Syracuse had Alex Klein for the entire offseason. GM Alex Klein had him for the entire offseason. Syracuse had the NIL backing. They had the funding. And Syracuse went out and got everybody that they wanted from the portal. Along with, you bring in Kai and Anthony, Sadiq White, who are 2 high-level 4-stars. Syracuse got everything that they wanted, that this staff wanted, in year 3. You bring in William Kyle. Maybe doesn't have the offense that Eddie Lampkin has, but definitely has the athleticism and defense over Eddie Lampkin. You bring in Nate Kings, the shooter that Syracuse desperately needed last season. You bring in Nathan George, the point guard that Syracuse desperately needed last season. And then you bring in some depth in Tyler Betsy, who is one of the best shooters on this team. It seemed like Syracuse had it all going for them. And then these losses just keep happening. And it's becoming to the point now where you can't defend it any longer. And I don't think that Syracuse has any way back to the NCAA tournament. And I don't want to sound like that because it's the middle of January. This team still has a lot of opportunities, but the ifs are so large now that I don't see any way back for Syracuse. And ultimately, if Syracuse is to miss the NCAA tournament, you have to turn your head back to Adrian Autry and say, that's probably it. That's probably it. He's a guy that I've wanted to work out, and it's just not going to work out here at Syracuse. Great guy, great human being, loves the university to death. I know he does. But there is a distinct difference in wanting to turn the program around and actually knowing how to. And unfortunately, I don't think Adrian Autry knows how to turn this program around. The offense is stagnant. It's not good. It's a lot of ISO, sticking basketball. It'll go to one side of the floor and it won't see the other side of the floor until the possession's over. It's just not... It's not a lot of entertaining basketball for what should be a very entertaining roster. William Kyle, you have the high flyer, the guy that can dunk it, the guy that can play defense, rebound the basketball. You have Nate Kings who can shoot the lights out. You have Nathan George who can lead you in assist. You have Donnie Freeman who can score at pretty much every level and give you a double-double while doing so. J.J. Starling, which I think J.J. Starling is a whole nother conversation because I've seen J.J. Starling get worse here. Get worse, and I'm not sure how that has happened. But at the end of the day, the roster, you look at the roster on paper, this team should be a tournament team. And I'm not saying that they should be a 5 seed. I'm not saying that they should be a team that you know is making it by February. But this team should be a bubble team. Shouldn't be a discussion. This team should be, at minimum, a 10 or an 11 seed. When you look at it on paper, it absolutely should be. And it always comes back to the head coach. Now, I'm not saying that Adrian Autry was at fault for the Boston College loss. But again, we keep having these conversations. The offense is just not good enough against decent level defensive teams. And Boston College was a decent level defensive team. Nothing crazy. They can't score the ball that well, but they do get down and they will play defense at a decent level. And Syracuse could not score against them. They could not keep care of the ball against them. Now, some of the mistakes today, it doesn't matter who the coach is. Some of the mistakes that were made on Saturday, it doesn't matter who the coach is. Those were just boneheaded mistakes. Those were just elementary level mistakes from Syracuse and from guys at Syracuse that you would expect to be leaders. But it always goes back to the head coach, unfortunately. And I really do wonder if Adrian Autry's time is coming to an end at Syracuse. And I see a lot of people wanting Adrian Autry fired right now. And I do have to say this, Adrian Autry will not be fired mid-season. AD John Wildhack is not going to embarrass a legend to the school like that by firing him mid-season. It's not going to happen. And what problem does it really solve? It doesn't. Syracuse would just, I'm guessing, would promote a guy like Alan Griffin, maybe Dan Engelstad, who has head coaching experience at Mount St. Mary's. But overall, firing a guy midseason just does not do anything for your program. So Adrian Autry will not be fired midseason. He is going to stick it out. And maybe, I'm trying to stay realistic, but I'm also trying to be positive the best way I can. The season is not over for Syracuse. Okay, it's not impossible that this team gets to the NCAA tournament. They don't have to go and win the ACC tournament to make the NCAA tournament. It is just extremely improbable. I think that Syracuse would probably have to win 4, maybe 5 quad 1 games now. I mean, that's what I'm guessing, is they would have to win 4 to 5 quad 1 games now. And the quad 1 opportunities they're going to have is at Virginia, at Louisville, at Duke, at North Carolina. North Carolina at home is barely holding on as a quad 1 game right now. North Carolina's been struggling a lot recently, but that game is slightly still a quad 1 game at home. On the road, it definitely is a quad 1 game, so you don't have to worry about that. At NC State would be a quad 1 game. NC State just suffered a very bad loss over the weekend, but NC State on the road would be a quad 1 game. But you hear how many ifs that is, and realistically, I don't expect this team to beat Virginia on the road. I don't expect them to beat Duke on the road. I don't expect them to beat Louisville on the road, or even North Carolina. I just don't. I don't see it. There's not a world where I see this team being able to do that. Maybe you get North Carolina at home. You know, that's a Saturday game, 1 o'clock game on a Saturday. Maybe you fill up the dome. Maybe you get the crowd into it. Students are involved. I guess it will just depend how Syracuse is doing by that point. I mean, the season could completely be over by that point. But maybe you get North Carolina at home like they did a couple years ago. I'm not sure. I don't see them winning at NC State, even though they've not been really great at home, weirdly. I don't think they'll win at NC State. Just too many ifs. So the season, no, it's not over, but it's very improbable that this team goes to the NCAA tournament. They need, I think, 4, maybe 5. They might need to win all of their quad 1 opportunities remaining to make the NCAA tournament, which is crazy to say. And that is just too big of an if for this team. Because Duke, I don't know if anyone stops Duke in the ACC. North Carolina has struggled recently, but I think North Carolina is better than we are by a good stretch. Louisville, same thing. They've struggled recently, but I think Louisville's better. Virginia, probably the second best team in the ACC right now. I mean, they beat North Carolina, or beat Louisville, excuse me. So I would put them over Louisville as the second best ACC team right now. I just don't see it. And I hate to be that way, but I just don't see Syracuse being good enough to make the NCAA tournament. I don't see them winning enough quad 1 games to make the NCAA tournament, and I'm sorry. I hate to be that way, but I just don't see it. And that's why I believe that Adrian Autry and his time here at Syracuse is slowly coming to an end. All right. Enough with the negative talk with Adrian Autry, and enough with the turnovers and bad loss, quad 3 losses. Another quad 3 loss. Stinks. But enough with that. let's start to preview who Syracuse has next, because the season has to go on. It's only January. It has to keep going. And Syracuse will be at home next. They'll return home on Wednesday night, 9 o'clock tip-off. I'll get into the 9 o'clock tip-offs here in a minute and why I don't like them. But they will be at home to Virginia Tech on Wednesday evening. Now, Virginia Tech's an interesting team, 14-5. 14-5, 3-3 in conference play. So you probably look at that, Virginia Tech, they're okay. They're an okay team. Nothing crazy. Let me tell you how many points that they've lost. How many points they've lost by in their 3 ACC losses. Lost 81-78 to Wake Forest. 3-point loss. Lost 69-68 to Stanford. 1-point loss. Lost 77-76 at SMU. 1-point loss. So they've lost 3 ACC games by combined 5 points. And that SMU game, I don't know if anyone saw that. I'm not going to get into it here. But they lost that game in the most tragic way possible. I can't get over how they lost that game. Won't get into it here because it's not relevant. But SMU, losing at Wake Forest, losing to Stanford, losing at SMU. Wake Forest, not a great loss. Stanford and SMU are decent teams. They have wins against Virginia in triple overtime. That was a very good win. They beat Cal by 3 points and then beat Notre Dame over the weekend by 13 points. So Virginia Tech is a solid basketball team. Solid basketball team. And they currently rank in the top 55, so at 54, of the net rankings, which would equal a quad 2 win if Syracuse is able to get it. So this is a quad 2 game for Syracuse. And if you are wondering, Syracuse has dropped to 75 in the net rankings, which is not very good. Not very good at all. But Virginia Tech come in a quad 2 game. Quad 2 game doesn't do a whole lot for your resume. It would be a very good, solid win for Syracuse that Syracuse absolutely has to have. But again, it's one of those games that probably doesn't do much for you resume-wise with a win, but continues to hurt you even worse with a loss. So, Syracuse has to have this game against Virginia Tech. Have to have this game against Virginia Tech. There's no doubt about that Syracuse has to win this game. They have to win against everybody pretty much that we expect them to win against. And I do expect Syracuse to win this game. Now we know Virginia Tech, is led by Avdalis, the freshman from Greece. I've watched this kid play. He has a lot of Luka Doncic in his game. 6'9", 215. Freshman, slow, methodical. He's a good player. And I think that Syracuse will have their hands full with him on the defensive end on Wednesday. So this is a decent Virginia Tech team who is led by an experienced head coach in Mike Young, who I think is better than their record indicates. It's definitely better than their record indicates, actually, because I can't believe that this team has 3 ACC losses, because I've seen them play, and I know how good they are, and I know how close they've lost some of these games, and it stinks. It stinks. But I do expect Syracuse to win this game. And I don't like the 9 o'clock tip-off, though, because Syracuse has not been very good at 9 o'clock tip-offs. And you'll probably be like, Eli, they're 3-0 in 9 o'clock tip-offs. Yeah, they're 3-0 in 9 o'clock tip-offs, but Syracuse has been atrocious in 9 o'clock tip-offs. Atrocious. Their first 9 o'clock tip-off of the year was Monmouth. Couldn't hit a free throw to save their lives. That's when we knew from the jump that Syracuse had a free throw problem, is because they should have beat Monmouth by 20 and gave up plenty of free throws. Only won that game 78-73. Their second 9 o'clock tip-off was on my birthday against St. Joseph's. They won 71-63. Another pretty dreadful offensive performance, if you ask me. Sleepy, lazy performance. And then just this past Tuesday against Florida State. Florida State, a team who does not defend well, can score depending on how many threes they're making. Syracuse was able to get the victory 94-86, but I don't know if I would necessarily call that a shootout or more so just bad defense. So if you ask me, Syracuse has been pretty bad in 9 o'clock tip-offs. And then I guess that I'm going to be hypocritical then because I'm saying that Syracuse is going to win this game. Because I think that Syracuse is going to win this game because they have to. And I think that Adrian Autry understands it. I think he fully is aware now about his job status, that this is slowly coming to an end. And I think Syracuse will have enough energy, level 5 effort, as Adrian Autry loves to say, enough level 5 to beat Virginia Tech at home. Students are back on campus. I don't know how many students will actually be willing to get out at 9 o'clock on a weekday. But I expect Syracuse to win this game. And that is my prediction because I will not be on here again until after that game. That podcast will either come Wednesday evening or sometime Thursday. Depending, late tip-off. So I think Syracuse wins this game. And when we're previewing this game, I think Syracuse finds a way. I think it's absolutely going to be close because we've seen that Virginia Tech does not play in a lot of blowouts. They don't blow out a lot of teams, nor do they get blown out by a lot of teams. And I think Syracuse has no choice but to scrap, find a way at home to get a quad 2 victory before they play Miami this upcoming weekend, which I will get into the next episode. Huge one for Syracuse, huge one. Can't stress it enough how big this game is. And I said it, I don't think the season's over. I just think it's very improbable for this team to make the NCAA tournament. That's all. But I'm still going to watch, I'm still going to cover, and Syracuse is going to have to find a way to win a basketball game. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. With that being said, I think that is about all that I have for this episode. I appreciate you guys tuning into the first ever episode of Echoes from the Dome. I appreciate everybody listening in. More content coming. Like I said, we'll have the Virginia Tech reaction coming up either Wednesday night directly after that game or sometime Thursday, but that podcast will come before Miami on Saturday. Once again, I appreciate you guys listening in. Click the follow button, subscribe button, hit the like button, whatever you got to do it. Support the channel, and I will see you guys again later in the week. Go Cuse.